I did this with a colleague of mine. I said, hey, there's something that's a little more in depth that I'd like to talk to you about. It'll probably take between 30 minutes to 45 minutes. When will you have time this week for that conversation? Respecting the way that he has prioritized his life, his day, his week, asking for what I need and not word vomiting like, oh, I need to talk to you about something right now. It's really, really important. Though it might be emotionally important for me right now, it's just disrespectful of the way the masculine looks at life. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Ancient Intelligence. You've got your host, Anya Shack here. And today I want to dive right into one of my favorite topics, honoring men and how we do that. So I've been thinking about this for the last couple of days, and I just wrote out the 5 ways that I honor men in and out of my daily life, whether it's colleagues, peers, mentors, etc., and people that I'm dating. So this was just the first 5 that really came to me. And so I want to share them here. I think these are really, really important. And they really get into this idea of how we can respect men and how by not doing some of these things, we're really disrespecting men. And there's a beautiful definition that I love of the word respect. A feeling of deep admiration for someone or something elicited by their abilities, qualities, or achievements. Amazing. So all of this to me is men, masculine, the masculine psyche, the masculine approach to life and the way that men move through life, the way that men see the world, the way that men look at things, and how we just as a society have completely disregarded this in such a massive way, in so many of our institutions. And we forget, it's because of this, the way that men approach life and the masculine psyche is why we have what we have, right? It's why I'm sitting in this house that was put together by men, right? Brick by brick. The electricity that I'm using, right, was strung up by men. And I say all this because I think it's just really, really important. And in a lot of my other videos, I talk a lot about the feminine psyche and how important understanding the feminine psyche is and why, the feminine brain was adapted towards what it was adapted to for nurture and caretaking and giving, and how, yes, we might be missing a lot of that in our society now. But the point of my channel and the point of Ancient Intelligence is, to come on back to a place of harmony, right? And a friend of mine, he recently said, hey, what's your legendary question? And I liked that. What's the legendary question that you live your life by? And it's this kind of idealistic, bigger picture view of what the real vision is. And I think my legendary question is what is the ultimate harmony that we can achieve together as men and women? And how do we get there? We get there by talking about what works, right? And what's important as opposed to what is not working, right? And so let's get into it. 5 ways that I honor men in my day-to-day life. And so I have a lot of women that listen on Spotify. So ladies, let me know how this is landing. A lot more men watch on YouTube. So gentlemen, let me know how this lands for you. Let's get into it. So the big difference between men and women, and I talk about this in another video, I'll link it down below, Understanding Our Instincts as Hunter-Gatherers, is really this distinction between singular focus for men and diffuse focus for women. So as women, we have this diffuse focus, which I found a really great definition that I like, which is it's this broad type of attention where our brain processes information kind of in the background while we're available to endless inputs from the world, right? That's why as women, we can do things while maintaining connection with each other and with other things that are happening. This is so adaptive because imagine being so hyper-focused on a task that we can't hear a child crying, right? That would not be effective for our survival as a tribe, right? So that's great as women. Now we switch over to men. They have this singular focus where if you think about the hunter, he's got to bring back the protein and he's the one responsible for this because of course a woman is not hunting big game with a baby on her back, of course. So he's out there hunting this big game days and days on end, days and days on end. He has to cut things out. He has to focus so that he can get the job done. This is what makes one of the things that makes men incredible, and it's how we have such incredible accomplishments and things that we see in our world, right? Men are amazing. They like, put up highways in months, and they just do so many incredible things, like feats of achievement because of this singular focus. And because of that, there are a couple of things that we need to understand about what it's like to live with, interact with, be with these wonderful humans with singular focus in our world. And when we don't take the time to respect and honor the way they move through life, right? Then we do everyone a disservice because we disrespect them and that's hurtful to them. And then we don't get to experience what we want to experience as women, which is union with them and care and respect and reverence from them and with them. So, number one, let's get into it. I asking men for time to talk instead of word vomiting just whenever the heck we feel like it. That's really, really key. And the reason is it's because of this singular focus that for them, talking is an activity, right? Whereas for women, talking can happen while we're doing other activities, as you imagine gatherers picking berries while they're talking about whose birthday it is, etc., right? For men, it's not like that. A conversation really requires space and time because it is the task that we're focused on in that moment. So, something that I've learned to do with men is specifically if I want to have an important, meaningful conversation. For example, I did this with a colleague of mine. I said, hey, there's something that's a little more in depth that I'd like to talk to you about. It'll probably take between 30 minutes to 45 minutes. When will you have time this week for that conversation? Right? Respecting the way that he has prioritized his life, his day, his week, asking for what I need and not word vomiting like, oh, I need to talk to you about something right now. It's really, really important. Though it might be emotionally important for me right now, it's just disrespectful of the way the masculine looks at life. So when there's important conversations that need to be had, when a woman really wants to tell a man something that matters, just ask him for when he'll be available for that conversation and don't, bury the lead. Tell him you have something important to talk to him about. Let him know that this is important to you. Let him know. He's not going to read your mind. And so this is one thing that has been really effective for me just in friendships and dating and everything. I find that when we get to that conversation, there's openness, there is a welcoming of that conversation. And he's really truly prepared for that conversation because men like to be prepared for what they're going into. They don't like to be blindsided. And it's just wonderful. So ask men for when they'll be available for a conversation instead of just blurting things out when you feel like it. Super key. So next point on that one. Don't interrupt him when he's focused on a task, right? So because of this singular focus, when men almost like it's funny. I almost imagine men like getting into some sort of like invisibility cloak, like they're in a task and then they have to get out of it and then they have to get into another task. And so it's really, really key because when they're super hyper focused on something, it's really meaningful for them. And this applies specifically when it's like a man's passion or something that he's doing or his work or something that's important to him. Don't interrupt him because it's just going to take him a while to get back into that task. It's important to give him the respect of waiting until he's finished with his task to talk to him or to go into the next thing. So I have a really great example. I actually helped a couple with this. This is something that was a huge blind spot that kind of both of them didn't even realize was happening. But as we started to talk and as I started to get to know what the frustrations were, we figured it out. So a gentleman that was a client of mine, he absolutely loved cooking. He's always loved cooking. He's cooked all the time. And for him, cooking has been like therapeutic, right? It's been this therapeutic thing that he's always done. And so once he got together with his girlfriend, she was around, of course, and he loves her and all of that. But she used to always kind of interrupt him while he was cooking. And for her, it's not a big deal, right? People are in the kitchen, you sit down on the high chair, you chat, you talk about your day. And that seems totally fine and normal, but specifically for them, cooking was his therapeutic like release. Cooking is literally him going into the cooking task and not wanting to be interrupted by anyone. And this might not be true for people, right? For everyone, but this was very true for them. And so he just kept getting so frustrated because he did ask her, you know, can you please not interrupt me while I'm cooking? And because she has this diffused focus and she can't really appreciate, or she couldn't really appreciate beforehand, how singular focus works and how important it is to respect and admire that moment, especially when a man is in his task. She just thought because she talks to other people while she's cooking, it would be fine for him. It's not fine for him. She finally got it. We went through all of this, and then he started cooking again. And so it totally worked out. And now he literally, no one talks to him while he's cooking, and he's happy as can be. And so it's just these little things that can really, it's these small things that really cause these problems and have relationships crumble. But when we can understand that there's like, if you think about it, right, on the surface, it's like she just wanted to chat while he was cooking, but in his psyche and his body, right, in his masculine approach to life, like he just felt disrespected over and over again. And so when we understood that, when she understood that, it never happened again. So really important to just not interrupt men when they're focused on something they love and they're just really into. Just don't do it. It's not respectful to them. Next thing, number three, really understand the need that men have for transition time. Okay. This is a key one. This is straight out of the book of Alison Armstrong. Okay. She is like the OG. I talk about her all the time. She's been doing this work for 45 plus years. She talks about this in a lot of her work. So, because people with singular focus, men, our favorite lovely men, they focus super hard on something. And until they decide what the next focus is going to be, right? They need transition time. They really, really need transition time. And so, really honoring that in men, giving them that 20 minutes, that 30 minutes, whatever it is, just no communication, no contact, just allow them the time to be in that nothingness space. Alison Armstrong always talks about like, what do you think a hunter did right after he brought home the big game? And everyone in one of her workshops was like, I don't know, like, played music or talked. And she was like, nope, he just sat there and stared out into space. It was his nothingness time. And that's so, so key to understand about men. And a great analogy for this is like airplane mode on your phone. Women don't really have this mode, but men really have this mode. So when women are constantly asking men, like, what are you thinking about? What are you doing? What are you thinking about? And their answer is nothing. Women have such a hard time believing this because as women, as you imagine, our diffused focus has us available to all inputs at all times to the point where I think I read some statistics around how women's neurons are still firing at a much higher level when we're sleeping, even. So, like, we're really kind of this in this always on ambient, space, whereas men are really, really on or really, really off. It's just a different vibration. It's just a different energetic of life. And so understanding that, he's on airplane mode, give him his airplane mode time. There's nothing going on. There's nothing being discussed or thought of and just let it be. It's a really, really key thing, specifically that transition time and that airplane mode time. So number four, I know I'm going through these kind of fast because I want this to be like a little bit of a shorter 20-ish minute episode, and just really actionable. So number four, really take his advice, right? This is something that I've recognized that since I've started doing with men, it's been a game changer. So what I do is I don't ask for advice until I'm ready to take it. So this goes back to this definition of respect. When I feel a deep admiration for someone based on their abilities, qualities, or achievements, that's a sign of respect, right? So if I'm asking a man for his advice and he offers me his advice as a gift, which is it's always a gift from men, right? Suddenly he is now accountable for my problem or the thing that I have asked advice for. He has now taken ownership of that himself because he's so it matters so much to him to, be someone that is respected and have an opinion and advice that is respected. And so if I ask him for advice and then I don't take it, it's a gut punch. It's just completely disrespectful. So specifically in closer relationships and intimate relationships, right? This is a person you're supposed to love and admire and respect more than anyone else. And so just doing that is a no-go, right? And so the better thing to do is not ask for advice, right? If you're not sure yet or you don't know. With women, a lot of times it's about connection and not effectiveness. So for us, it's like, oh, we'll share something or we'll ask, and then if it doesn't resonate, then we'll kind of toss it aside. I can tell that the woman hasn't put so much of her heart, body, mind, and soul into this advice. It's just a bit more offhand, whereas a man, he will really thoughtfully think about this, right? Answering this question will be the singular thing he's focused on, and he'll want to really get it right, and he'll really want to help you, especially when he cares and loves you. And so don't ask advice and not take it. Don't do that. It's disrespectful to men. Don't do it. And if you're not ready to take the advice, then don't ask for it, right? That's another one. And five. So I want to get into this last one. So the other four are applicable to peers and colleagues and mentors and dad and grandfather and cousin and all of that. But this one is a little more focused on relationship, romantic and intimate relationship and dating. So I would even say far beyond dating, intimate relationship. So this idea of emotional foreplay. So we've heard, we've heard. I think a lot of different people have said this, but this idea that sexually men are a stovetop and women are the oven, right? When it comes to sexuality, you think about like how does a woman get excited about sex and how does she feel most attractive and desired, right? Well, it all starts in the morning. It's this real foreplay, this real slow teasing out and being patient and loving and giving a woman time to, develop that sexual desire. Something that I've thought about is that men are the exact same way, but with emotional conversations, right? Emotional intimacy. So if you think about how with sex, like a man is just a little more available, a little sooner and a little quicker, just based on his biology, and a woman's not. When it comes to intimacy and his heart and his emotions and what he's feeling about something, there's an opportunity to treat it the same way as a woman that you want him to treat you sexually, right? If you ask him a question and you're like demanding an answer right now, it's almost like you don't actually care about him and how long it might take him to think about it, get clear on it, really go inward about it. And it's almost like I've seen this happen because I've done this before myself, right? I've asked a man before, what do you think about this? Or, will you answer me? And then I've wanted to know right away. But that said so much more about my insecurity and my, you know, um, need for validation and clarity. And it was just speaking towards my distrust for myself and for the man in question. And so it wasn't effective at all. And what's actually really effective, and if you really respect the man in question, you'll ask him something. You'll say, "Hey, this is really important to me. I really want to know this. Take all the time you need." Give him the time, whether it takes a day, a week, however long it takes him, he will come back to you with a really thoughtful, connected, um, mature, deeply rich response and expression of who he is internally. You just have to be patient and give him that time and patience emotionally that he gives you in the more physical space. And so it's just so interesting. It's almost like he's the oven emotionally, and you're the stovetop. And it's just an interesting analogy, and I love it. And so these are 5 ways that I choose to, take that extra step and do something that I would not do with a woman, right? With a woman, I might burst out and say something, or I might do things a little bit differently or not care so much about transition time because women don't need it. But for men, this idea of asking for time for serious conversations, this idea of not interrupting him while he's focused on a task because he has to disconnect for him to really focus and be effective. And that matters so much to him and that's so important to him. And so we've got to just honor that because it's just so much beauty happens when we honor men for being men and how they approach life. That was number two. Number three, that transition time, right? Number four, that really taking his advice or not asking for it at all. And number five, that emotional foreplay. Hope y'all have enjoyed this one and catch y'all on the next one. If you found value in what I'm doing here, please help me grow the podcast. And you can do one of two things. Either share the episode with a friend or leave me a review on Spotify or Apple. This will help me so much. Until next time.